Y'all, let's dive into the world of Diddy, and let me tell you, this story is more twisted than my favorite pretzel. So grab your iced coffee, settle in, and let's spill this tea. First off, let's set the scene with this jaw-dropping clip.
Richard claims she witnessed Diddy beat his former girlfriend Cassie and was punished when trying to intervene. She alleges Diddy threatened her life, withheld her earnings, and subjected her to inhumane working conditions, including being groped and assaulted.
It has been a long journey to get here. She did not want to hide. Why should she hide her head in shame? She has not done anything wrong.
The 4-4, all you heard was Papa, don't hit me no more. Let's go. Kick in the door, waving the 4-4. Hey, yeah.
Y'all, when I tell you my jaw hit the floor, Diddy throwing punches like it's nothing. But hold up, because this story goes way deeper than just one incident. What if I told you that the real scandal isn't just what Diddy did, but how the entire music industry let it slide? Buckle up, besties, because we're about to go on a wild ride. So let's talk about Dawn Richard. If you're not familiar, she used to be signed to Diddy's label, first as part of Danity Kane and later with Dirty Money. Yeah, she's been in Diddy's circle for a minute, and let me tell you, it was not all glitter and gold. Dawn just hit Diddy with a lawsuit that's dropping more bombs than my favorite pop songs drop beats. It's painting a picture of Diddy that's straight up terrifying. Now, we all know how things turned out for the Danity Kane girls. Aubrey O'Day was always super vocal about the hell they went through, but Dawn, she kept her mouth shut until now. Get this. Diddy allegedly told Dawn, "I'll let you go if you don't talk trash about me." And girl, she took that deal faster than I grabbed the last slice of pizza, but now the tea is spilling over and it's scalding. In her lawsuit, Dawn paints a dark picture of her time under Diddy's control. One of the wildest claims? He once locked her in his car for 2 hours after one of their blow-ups. I'm sorry, but what in the carjacking is going on here? Picture this. It's a rehearsal for Saturday Night Live with Diddy Dirty Money. Diddy's already on edge, losing it in the middle of the studio because Dawn and Keena aren't around. He goes full meltdown mode, screaming and throwing insults, making a whole scene in front of the crew. When Dawn finally stands up for herself and tells him to stop, Diddy wasn't having it. He literally clenched his fists like he was ready to swing. Luckily, his bodyguard stepped in before things got violent. But here's the kicker. Instead of helping Dawn, the bodyguard locked her in Diddy's Bentley while she screamed for help. Thank goodness she had her phone and called her dad, who hopped on a train from Baltimore to NYC, ready to throw hands with Diddy himself. But when Dawn's dad showed up, ready to bring the cops into this mess, Diddy had other plans. He allegedly hit Dawn's dad with a chilling threat. Think about your family and think about your daughter's career. I mean, what in the mafia movie is this? And that's just the start, besties. Dawn says Diddy had her working like a machine, never letting her rest, barely feeding her, and constantly making threats. It's like he thought he was running a sweatshop instead of a record label. Let's rewind to 2004 when Dawn got tangled up with Diddy on Making the Band. What seemed like her big break quickly turned into a nightmare. Diddy was out here calling the female contestants fat, ugly, and throwing out every insult in the book. But the real horror show, Dawn says they were pushed to their absolute limits, working without food, sleep, or any breaks. Days on end of rehearsals until their bodies gave up. Dawn lost a ton of weight and even broke out in rashes because she was strapped to a mic pack 24/7. Can you imagine MTV just watching your health fall apart while the cameras keep rolling? If she even thought about leaving the studio, he'd snap, "Where the f you going? We've got an album to make." Like, excuse me, is this a record label or a prison camp? Oh, and let's talk money, honey. According to Dawn, Diddy owes her a whopping $1.2 million in royalties, plus another $335,000 for tour earnings. She was out here promoting his brands like Cyrock and Diddy Beats without getting a dime. Basically, she was putting in all the work and he was keeping all the cash. It's giving exploitation, and I'm not here for it. But wait, it gets worse. Dawn claims Diddy wasn't just financially abusive, he was physically inappropriate too. She says he'd make her strip down to her underwear, humiliate her by calling her all kinds of names, lazy, ugly, you name it, and criticize her body in front of his entourage. Once, while she was undressing for a fitting, Diddy allegedly groped her, pretending to show a stylist how he wanted her bra straps. I'm sorry, but that's not a fitting, that's assault. And don't even get me started on the Christmas gift he suggested, breast implants. He actually told her, "You're an A cup." I'm thinking D double quote. Imagine your boss saying that. I'd be calling HR faster than you can say lawsuit. As if all that wasn't enough, Dawn was also stuck in the middle of Diddy's infamous freak-off parties. You know, those wild gatherings where anything went. She'd be in the studio while these parties raged on, and sometimes Diddy would try her in front of everyone, crossing boundaries she didn't want crossed. And this wasn't just a one-off. He did this stuff repeatedly, pushing her to the edge. One of the more heartbreaking parts of her lawsuit is how trapped she felt. Diddy's threats weren't just empty words. He'd brag about making people disappear and getting away with anything. It was psychological warfare, besties. She was constantly afraid for herself and her family. He even told her, "Don't call your dad unless you're in the hospital." Like, what does that even mean? Things got even more brutal for Dawn in 2010. After years of Diddy's non-stop grind, her health completely crashed. She was diagnosed with anemia, her white blood cell count tanked, and her joints were basically wrecked with something called arthralgia. That's just a fancy way of saying her body was falling apart, all thanks to the endless stress and pressure she was put through under Diddy's watch. Now let's talk about Cassie. We all know she sued Diddy for how horrifically he treated her, but Dawn Richard came through with some jaw-dropping details that paint an even worse picture. Dawn says she witnessed Diddy literally put hands on Cassie in front of everyone like it was nothing. One of the most shocking moments? Diddy storms into the kitchen, cussing out Cassie, calling her the B word, screaming, "You never do anything right," and then throws a hot skillet full of eggs at her. All because she didn't cook the eggs right? I'm sorry, but Gordon Ramsay would never. According to Richard, Diddy was high as a kite, choking Cassie and dragging her up the stairs like some kind of monster. Dawn wanted to step in, but her bandmate Keena stopped her, warning her that Diddy was too dangerous and that she shouldn't be stepping on his toes. The next day, Diddy locks Dawn and Keena in a dimly lit studio room, basically telling them to shut their mouths. He pulls this whole power trip, calling it a lover's argument and saying, "This is normal. This is what love is." Oh, and just in case that wasn't manipulative enough, he throws in, "People end up missing." Yeah, a straight-up threat. Dawn was terrified, and who could blame her? But it gets even worse, besties. Dawn's lawsuit paints an even uglier picture of Diddy's control. From yanking Cassie by the neck in front of party guests to literally punching her at a fancy industry dinner in front of power players like Jimmy Iovine. The man had zero chill. Dawn and Keena even tried to help Cassie break free, begging her to leave Diddy for good. But the result? Diddy hit back hard, making it crystal clear with threats like, "You wanna die today?" and "I end people." Dawn knew exactly what that meant. Cross Diddy, and you risk everything. Now, here's where things get really wild. Dawn shared another shocking moment at a dinner party where Diddy full-on punched Cassie in the stomach. This wasn't behind closed doors. This went down in front of music industry giants. We're talking about some of the biggest names in the business. Usher, Neo, Jimmy Iovine. These aren't just random people. They're the ones who make and break careers. But when Diddy allegedly punched Cassie, they didn't say a word. Not a peep. Cassie was crying and in pain, but everyone just kept eating like nothing happened. Diddy's assistant, Capricorn Clark, quietly escorted Cassie out of the room while the party carried on. Like, what kind of power does a man have to stop an entire room from stepping in? It's terrifying, Dawn said, seeing Diddy go off on Cassie like that, with all these big shots around, made her scared for her own safety. Can you imagine working in an environment where you're constantly looking over your shoulder, wondering if you're next? Richard's testimony paints a picture of an industry where the powerful do what they want and everyone else just has to deal. It's like a twisted game of see no evil, hear no evil. But here's the thing, by staying quiet, these stars might have helped keep this cycle of abuse going. Now, you might be thinking, why didn't they just speak up? Well, it isn't that simple. According to the lawsuit, Diddy had a way of making sure people kept their mouths shut. This silence from the top dogs in the industry? It's like giving a green light to abusers. It tells them they can get away with anything as long as they've got enough clout. And for the victims, it's a nightmare. They're stuck thinking, if Usher and Neo won't say anything, who's going to believe me? Speaking of Usher, his name has been popping up more and more lately, especially with Diddy facing a flood of lawsuits. It's no surprise, Usher spent some of his formative years at Diddy's infamous Flavor Camp. Now, if you're not familiar with the term, that was Diddy's private getaway where young artists would come to train, collaborate, and allegedly get exposed to the wild side of the entertainment industry. Usher, who was just a teenager at the time, lived there under Diddy's wing, and the rumors surrounding what went on during those years have only grown louder.
I moved to New York City, and I lived with Sean Puffy Combs for a year.
That's the crazy thing. Now, that was L.A. Reid's idea, right? We're sending you over to something called Puffy Flavor Camp.
There you go.
Imagine being so young, surrounded by all kinds of things no one should witness at that age.
Yeah, but you were 13. What were you seeing?
I went there to see the lifestyle.
Right.
And I saw it. And it was, but I don't know if I could indulge and understand what I was even looking at. It was pretty wild.
So nobody tried to, some woman didn't come along.
I ain't say that.
Okay.
Usher himself himself has been pretty quiet about what really went down during his time at Flavor Camp. But it's hard not to wonder what kind of lasting impact those experiences may have had on him. Given everything coming out now, who knows what else Usher witnessed? The stories didn't stop with Cassie either. Dawn also mentioned seeing Kim Porter, another one of Diddy's exes, leaving his studio in tears with bruises on her face and lips. This wasn't just about mistreating one woman, this was a pattern. And it wasn't only physical abuse. Dawn claims Diddy threw these notorious drug-fueled parties where he'd invite underage girls. And well, you can imagine what happened next. He had his guests doing horrible things to these women. And here's the wild part. Diddy even had cops at these parties. Yep, he hired police officers to attend so everyone would know his influence stretched into law enforcement. That's why no one ever stopped him. He had everyone in his pocket, from the music industry to the cops. That's some next-level power, besties. It's no surprise that Dawn was terrified during her time with Diddy. She saw way too much, and her fear was real. But here's where things get messy. Some people are questioning Dawn's credibility because at one point she was still willing to work with Diddy. In fact, she was all for being part of the Making the Band reboot in 2020, and she even handed over one of her songs, Deliver Me, for his Love album. So why, after everything, would she still want to work with him? Well, Diddy's been a gatekeeper in the music industry for years. For someone like Dawn who needed opportunities, it's not hard to imagine why she'd feel like she had no choice but to play nice. The pandemic hit everyone hard, and Dawn was probably just trying to stay afloat, even if it meant working with the very man who had wronged her. And let's be clear, just because Dawn was cordial with him doesn't mean her claims aren't legit. People put up with a lot when they feel like their careers or even their lives are on the line. Now here's where things get even trickier. Keena, Dawn's bandmate, actually spoke out against Dawn's claims. Keena's take was that while she and Dawn shared some experiences, she didn't see things the same way. She wrote, "While I fully respect Dawn's right to recount her experiences, I want to emphasize that her account reflects her personal perspective and should not be interpreted as a universal truth applicable to everyone involved." Basically, Keena pulled the whole "I'm staying out of this" card, which, to be honest, is understandable. Keena's husband, Tony Vick, is friends with Diddy, so it's definitely a conflict of interest for her to publicly back Dawn's lawsuit. But it's still disappointing, especially considering Dawn once tried to help Keena leave her own allegedly abusive relationship. At the end of the day, Dawn's experiences with Diddy might not match up with Keena's, but that doesn't make them any less valid. Diddy's influence runs deep, and it's clear that he has a terrifying grip on the people around him. What's wild is that despite all this, Diddy's empire didn't crumble. It thrived. He locked in a $50 million deal with Interscope like nothing ever happened. The lawsuit implies that this success only boosted Diddy's ego, making him believe he could keep doing whatever he wanted, knowing fame and money would shield him from the fallout. The lawsuit doesn't just put Diddy on blast, it drags Interscope, Geffen, and A&M Records into the mess too, accusing them of letting all this violence slide while making bank off their connection with him. All these stories are coming out, and they're not just about Diddy being a bad guy. They're showing us how the whole system is broken. When you've got that much power and money, seems like you can get away with anything, and the people at the bottom, they're thinking they've got no choice but to shut up and take it. Now people are mad, like cancel your fave mad. They're looking at all these big names who just stood by and did nothing while Diddy was allegedly going off on Cassie. One fan wrote, "This man's downfall will expose the whole music industry." Another said, "Finally his accomplices are getting named because they are accomplices of Diddy because they didn't say nothing." But what do y'all think about all of this? Let's hear it in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on the latest tea. Because trust me, besties, with this story, the tea is far from over. Until next time, this is Hot Gossip, reminding you that in the world of celebrity gossip, the truth is often stranger than fiction, and sometimes it's darker too. Stay woke, stay informed, and remember, silence in the face of abuse is never the answer. Bye. Never the answer. Bye. Never the answer.